I always knew that my kind of vacation wasn't lounging on Florida beaches or taking guided tours through old cities. True freedom for me was disappearing beyond the horizon with nothing but my backpack, a tent, and the wilderness, where there was no phone signal, no tourist trails, just solitude and raw nature. As the head of an IT company, I was used to an endless flow of information and constant responsibilities, but sometimes I needed to disconnect. I had explored every inch of the forests and mountains surrounding my town and craved something new. Then it hit me, the Great Black Swamp. This vast stretch of marshland in Louisiana was infamous for its deadly quicksand, endless moss-covered islands, and eerie legends. The locals avoided it, whispering that the swamp didn't take kindly to outsiders. Some spoke of strange noises, others of shadows flickering just beyond the water's edge. And some claimed that if you ever heard a child's laughter out there, you'd never return. I dismissed these stories as backwoods superstition. A swamp was just a swamp. The key was knowing where to step and not going alone. But solitude was exactly what I was after. The more extreme, the better. I gathered my gear and made my way to a small town on the edge of the swamp. It was already evening, but I had a couple of hours before sunset, just enough time to get my bearings. From the first step, I realized this place had its own rules. The ground beneath me felt like a waterbed, shifting under my weight. I grinned, remembering how I used to love jumping on soft moss in the woods as a kid. But the fun quickly faded, replaced by a deep unease. The swamp greeted me with silence, broken only by the sucking sound of mud underfoot and a faint, almost imperceptible hum. It felt alive. I found a solid patch of land to set up my tent, pitched it quickly, and decided to explore a bit further. But after just a few steps, an unsettling feeling crept over me, like someone was watching. I turned, scanning the landscape. Nothing. My rational mind insisted it was just fatigue, my imagination, the sounds of nature. But then I heard something that defied all logic. A child's laughter. I spun around. The swamp stretched out to the horizon, empty. My pulse pounded in my ears. I forced myself to take another step. Then a voice right behind me. "Hi there!" I gasped and whirled around. Nothing. Only ripples spreading across the dark water as if something had just disappeared beneath the surface. I let out a nervous laugh. Must be birds. "This place is full of strange noises," I muttered, trying to convince myself. But as I hurried back to my tent, the voice called again, closer this time. "Come play with us!" I froze. A chill ran down my spine. The voice was cheerful, playful, like a child inviting a friend to join a game. I didn't turn around. I bolted straight for the tent. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I had the same nightmare. I was a child again, standing in this swamp, calling for help. Then I saw my parents, young, smiling, reaching out to me. Overjoyed, I ran to them, but their embrace was ice cold. They started pulling me down into the muck. I screamed, begged, but their smiles remained frozen like masks. I woke up drenched in sweat, gasping for air. The dream felt terrifyingly real, but the worst was yet to come. The next night, I heard footsteps circling my tent. Light barefoot steps, pausing, speeding up, stopping just outside the thin fabric walls. I gripped my knife, holding my breath. Then something began scratching at the tent, slow, deliberate, claw-like strokes, tracing patterns in the fabric. I couldn't take it anymore. I yanked open the zipper, jumped outside, and saw footprints. Small, child-sized prints leading straight into the bog, but none coming back. Then a whisper. Thin, reedy, like wind slipping through trees. "You're all alone." Alone? I clapped my hands over my ears, but the whisper curled inside my skull. As the sun set, the horror escalated. At first, I heard more footsteps, quick, light, scurrying behind me, but when I stopped to listen, silence swallowed everything. The dread from the night before gripped me again, and I rushed back to the tent, trying to distract myself with a book by flashlight. But I kept listening, unable to help myself. Then the footsteps returned, closing in. And on the wall of my tent against the setting sun, a shadow appeared, a grotesque human-like figure. It twitched unnaturally, shifting from side to side. Its long arms hung limp, its torso hunched forward, and its head lolled as if its neck couldn't support the weight. It swayed, letting out wet, gurgling sounds. Then it rasped, "Come play with us," and started collapsing toward my tent. I bolted. I ran blindly through the swamp, my breath ragged. I didn't care where I was going, just away. I ignored the risk of sinking into the mire. I feared whatever was behind me far more. After 10 minutes of sheer panic, I saw a cabin at the swamp's edge. Salvation, someone lived here. They could help me. I sprinted toward it and stopped cold. It was my tent. I had somehow run in a perfect circle. As night fell, the swamp's darkness thickened like ink, swallowing everything more than 5 feet away. I had no choice but to retreat inside and wait for dawn. Sleep was out of the question. Sitting there, knife in hand, every tiny noise made me jump. Then, when everything went still, the real terror came from below. The tent floor ripped open and 2 ice-cold, pale hands seized my legs. "Come play with us!" A guttural voice gurgled beneath the ground. The fingers dug into my flesh. I dropped my knife, my flashlight. I screamed. Some primal surge of terror gave me strength. I tore free and scrambled for the tent flap. In my panic, I clawed at the wrong side, finding only fabric. Meanwhile, the thing below kept emerging. I shone my flashlight and saw it. It had the figure of a boy, no older than 11, but its limbs were stiff like rotted wood. Its rags clung to a withered, half-decayed frame. The worst part, its face, almost featureless. No nose, no hair, no eyebrows, just empty, colourless eyes staring back. Its mouth twitched, letting out giggles, then gurgles, then fragmented words, but its expression never changed. As it lurched toward me, I slashed at the tent with my knife, ripped through the fabric and scrambled into the darkness. I could barely crawl. My legs were torn. The swamp water stung as I dragged myself forward, gagging on the stench. Behind me, I heard the thing creeping closer. Desperate, I screamed, "What do you want from me? I swear I'll never come back here!" Then everything went black. I woke up at the swamp's edge, covered in scratches and mud. My tent and gear were gone. I limped to the nearest town, and when I finally boarded a bus, the passengers looked at me in horror. An old man shook his head. "So, you met Swamp Billy, huh?" Please leave a comment, support the video with a like, and of course subscribe to the channel. You can also share this video with your friends. They'll probably find it interesting too.